Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a couple minutes to make sure everyone's joining in onto the meeting, but welcome. Hello, everyone. We'll be starting in a couple minutes. Ooh, I love the highs in the chats. Okay. All right. So I hope everyone is having a great day so far, and thank you for joining this presentation. So today we will be talking about iCARE funding opportunities. And Dr. Kaninji will be presenting about the iCARE Developmental Research Grant, eligibility questions, the application process, and we will also be having a question and answer session later at the end of the presentation. So Dr. Kaninji, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are. I am delighted to be with you this moment to provide some more details about the iCaRE, the Inclusive Cancer Research Equity Consortium Developmental Research Grant mechanism that is very focused on African researchers. My name is Dr. Ernie Kaninjing. I am from Georgia College and State University in Georgia. I am also one of the MPIs for iCaRE, and I am also part of CaPTC. So what we'll do today is to provide an overhaul of this funding mechanism and then take questions from you. I know many of you perhaps have had a chance to read the request for applications and you have some questions. So I will provide some highlights about the mechanism and then we'll go to Q&A. All right. So let me see if I can move my slides. So the overarching goal, the main purpose of this funding opportunity is really to provide training for early stage career investigators in Africa. So it's an opportunity for you to do a pilot funding, for you to be able to generate data, preliminary data that you can use as a proof of concept, or you can use as a proof of hypothesis to pursue other funding opportunities. So it's a developmental grant, it's a pilot funding to allow you with creative ideas, innovative ideas to put together a proposal that will enable you to generate preliminary data that can be leveraged for greater funding opportunities down the road. In terms of who is eligible to apply for this, you do have to be an active prostate cancer researcher in Africa. All right, you have to be actively working in this field. You could be somebody with a doctoral degree or maybe a postdoc fellow. The bottom line is you have to be an early career investigator. All right, so you may be a doctoral candidate. You may also have been somebody who just had a PhD within the last 10 years. All right, but somebody who has not received any funding yet for their own research. The most important criteria is that your proposed study has to be related to prostate cancer, either in terms of etiology, in terms of prevention, in terms of detection or diagnosis or treatment or survivorship. But it has to be related to prostate cancer. All right. Now, as we mentioned from the beginning, this is really to stimulate research opportunities, to stimulate research activities among early career investigators. So each proposal must have at least, at a minimum, one early stage investigator as part of the team. Collaborations between CaPTC sites is encouraged, where you may be studying something of interest across different populations. All right. As was mentioned before, current PIs or folks who already have funding are not eligible for this mechanism. Let's talk a little bit about the review criteria. There are two key review criteria that will be looked upon as part of this mechanism. The first one is the importance of the research. So how significant, what is the research question that you're trying to address? All right. What if you're successful? What would that look like? All right. What would success look like? How would that drive the field forward? All right. How would that drive the field forward? So how innovative is your research proposal? All right. How innovative? Also, we'll be looking at the rigor of the work you're trying to do. What are the approach you're trying to implement? Has it been rigorous? How have previous research done in this area? What approaches have they pursued? How would you advance the field? How would you move the field forward? So those are very important criteria that we'll be looking at closely when scoring applications. The third one is expertise. And expertise and resources, we look at those, but not in a way to make it punitive to certain candidates. Now, in terms of expertise and resources, for the investigator, we want to see, do you have the necessary knowledge to pursue this research? Do you have the necessary training? If not, do you have a mentor, a key mentor that will help you address your research question, who is an expert in the field? All right. So that's one thing. In terms of the environment, we want to make sure that the proposed research that you're trying to address can be done where you say will be the setting of your study. So, for example, if you're trying to do something in the lab, do you have the lab with the necessary equipment to carry out your proposal? If not, are you partnering with a mentor whose lab has the resources that will enable you to address the research questions? So those are key things that we'll be looking at. All right. And let me just review, because this, I believe this slide is one of the most important slides for you to understand. So let's go back again to factor number one, the importance of the research. All right. So what is the rigor of prior research in this area? All right. What are the key supporting documents do you have for your hypothesis? All right. Does your proposal, if successful, would that extend or would that improve scientific knowledge in the field? All right. Are you using to change some concepts? Are you using to introduce innovative technologies or treatments or prevention? So these are all key factors to look at in terms of the significance or the innovation. When we're talking about the rigor, again, how well reasoned is your approach? How well reasoned is the method that you're proposing? Can it be done? Can it be accomplished within the time frame? All right. Are there any weaknesses in prior research? Were you able to identify weaknesses in prior research? And how are you looking to address those weaknesses? So in other words, how different is your approach from current approaches in the field? All right. Is there a sound and rigorous experimental strategy that is replicable as part of your proposal? All right. Have you talked about potential problems that may come about? Importantly, have you provided alternative solutions to those? All right. Do you have any plans to address relevant, biological variables such as sex and protection of human subjects? So again, those are all key areas that will be addressed when we're reviewing applications. So here is the scoring system. We're using the NIH scoring system, where the lower the number, the better your application. So 1 is for exceptional, 2 is for outstanding, 3 is for excellent. So when you look at 1, 2, and 3, put together, those 3 scoring levels signify a high impact, a study with a high impact. Now, if you fall within the medium level, which is either a score of 4 or 5 or 6, again, 4 is very good, 5 is good, 6 is satisfactory, that is medium impact. And then low impact will be a grade of 7, 8, or 9, and 7 is classified as fair, 8 is classified as marginal, and 9 is classified as poor. This visual from the NIH just shows what we covered in the last slide. So you see high impact proposals will fall within the scores of 1, 2, or 3, medium impact 4, 5, 6, or low impact 7, 8, 9. All right. And what do we mean by high impact? Well, if successful in completing the aims in that proposal, it will make a significant contribution of high importance to the field. So it may have some weaknesses, but then it will provide, again, significant contribution. So 4, 5, and 6, again, they'll make a contribution of high importance to the field, but the weaknesses bring down some of the overall impact to medium. So you may have a proposal with the potential to have a big impact, but then because of the flaws or because of the weaknesses, it may moderate the overall impact from a high to a medium. And then we have the low impact. Again, what that signifies is that if successful in completing the aims of the study, the contribution of this will be of a moderate, again, or low impact. So that just gives you a visual of how we classify low versus medium versus high. All right. So a low proposal is one with a lot of weaknesses. So it may have some strength, but then you have a lot of weaknesses that dampen, the enthusiasm in terms of how the overall impact might be. So let's talk a little bit about the components of the application. So we need a lay abstract, something that somebody who is not working in your field can read and understand what you're trying to do. So break it down. Don't use too many jargons. So write a lay abstract such that someone who is not in the field can read and understand what the study is about. And then we have the specific aims page, the most important document, the one-page document that summarizes everything. It provides a background, talk a little bit about your preliminary study, all right, what you're proposing to do, and then list your aims. What are your aims? And briefly, what approach for each aim. So it's a one page that summarizes everything about your proposal. And then you also have to provide the main document, which is your research plan. It's a 6-page limit. Again, it will include, excluding bibliography. So the 6-page does not include your bibliography at the end. All right. And here's the breakdown of the research plan. So your introduction to your subject of your research or the background. And then you talk about the aims, what you're looking to do, and the approach for each aim. So you want to delineate your aims and the approach under each aim. And then what are the expected outcomes? If successful, what will happen? What do you anticipate would happen if you are successful? You want to talk about alternative approaches in case you run into trouble or you run into some challenges and you're not able to successfully pursue the aims that you or the plan that you had in mind. What alternative plans do you have? Or does everything crash and burn? All right. Importantly, what are future directions? What do you plan to do at the end of your research project? What is the road forward? What do you plan to do? Additionally, you need to provide an NIH biosketch, about 5-page limit. It's a 5-page limit. So you want to start working on this. If you Google NIH biosketch, there are examples online that you can see. Again, the NIH biosketch, you have to go create an ERA e-commerce account. and then create a username and password. You definitely want to start with your NIH BioSketch right away. Ask your mentor for an example of their BioSketch so you can take a look and try to create one. But you want to start on that right away, the NIH BioSketch. There are templates online. There are examples online that you can do. If you just Google example of NIH BioSketch, you'll see examples of those. And then you also want to have a signed letter from your CaPTC site PI about your membership, because we want folks who are bona fide prostate cancer researchers in Africa. All right. And that can be proven by your site supervisor providing you a letter of support indicating that you are actively doing prostate cancer work, research as a clinician or as a researcher back in Africa. So let's talk a little bit about the award amount. So we don't yet know how many applications we will receive, but our anticipation is between 500 to perhaps 1,000 per project. That was supposed to, there's a typo right there, bear with me. So it's between 500 to 1,000 per project. All right. 500 is for population-based studies and 1,000, especially for some lab-based studies. 40% of the awards will go to French-speaking countries. 30% of the awards will go to investigators based in Nigeria, and the remaining 30% will go to other English-speaking countries. So that's how the award will be distributed in terms of percentage. In terms of how the awards will be disbursed, after a review of the applications, the panel will make recommendations. Again, we'll score them and see which one is low, high, high, medium, and low impact. All right. And then we'll make recommendations for funding. And funding will be disbursed through the CaPTC Foundation. So funding will be disbursed through the CaPTC Foundation. And funding will be disbursed in 2 installments. The first installment is after the investigator has obtained the Institutional Review Board approval. Without your IRB, you cannot do a study, so you're not receiving funding without having your IRB in place. All right. Now, the second installment will be at least 50% of the research activities in your statement of work have been completed. So you got 50% up front after you provide your IRB authorization. You get 50%, you do the work. When you've completed 50% of the items on your statement of work, then you'll get the other 50% of the funding to complete the study. Now, there are expectations after you're done that you will submit technical and financial reports outlining the research activities that you set out to do in your specific aims and what you've actually done every 6 months. So every 6 months you do a semi-annual, and then every 12 months you do the annual. Awardees will maintain receipts and invoices for expenses for activities that were part of your research. And awardees, you are expected to disseminate your findings from your research through peer-reviewed manuscripts and also presentations, especially at the CaPTC Biannual Conference that happens every 2 years or so. And then to the last slide, the timeline. So here we are in the request for applications was already released in the end of November. Now is the time for you to review that. Make sure you're forming your team, you're having your research questions, you're drafting your application. You have to submit your application by January the 31st. January the 31st is when the applications are due by midnight. Now, we anticipate notifying potential awardees by the end of February. So by the end of February, awardees will be informed. So if you submit a good proposal, by the end of January, I would encourage you to start working to secure your IRB applications right away. I know IRB sometimes takes time. So if you're planning, you're writing your proposal, as soon as you submit it, I will go right away and start pursuing your IRB application, because in the event that you get funded, you will need the IRB to start implementation, which can start as early as the middle of March, March the 15th. And then 6 months from there, you have a report that's due every 6 months and then every 12 months as well. All right. So that in a nutshell, it's just highlight, it's not everything that was in the request for application. You definitely want to read the request for applications in a much more detailed way. But I just highlighted some of the key areas here to jumpstart our conversation. It looks like our host is not here, but I don't know if our moderator is here or if there are any questions.
Oh, I'm here. I wanted you to take the center stage, Dr. Kaninji. So,
Excellent. So that's just the overview. I think we're ready now for some questions.
okay. I So for questions and answers with StreamYard, there's a chat feature, so if everyone could write their questions out in the chat. Additionally, with the funding award, I believe the amount that was allotted may be a little bit more than what was originally mentioned. So I think we can send a clarification on that amount.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. So if we do have, because right now we're planning on 10,000 for the entire research proposals. So, and again, we don't know how many applications we'll get. So that's a critical thing. We don't know how many applications we'll get. Typically, we may have requested a letter of intent, but we had a short compressed time period, and we don't want to truncate that. So we'll definitely clarify, Melinda, once I have details about the complete amount of money. I'll be glad to share that with all of our investigators. So that just means there could be more funding for more projects.
Exactly.
That's a good problem to have.
Yes, a very good problem to have. Alrighty, so at this time point, are there any questions? If so, please feel free to write it on the chat. I'm monitoring the chat to see if there's any questions. There are any questions.
And while you're thinking about questions, I'll go back to my original slide because it also has the submission portal. So you may be asking yourself, how do you submit your application? There is a portal right there. If you click on that QR code, it will take you to the portal where you'll be able to submit your application. So the flyer for the funding opportunity announcement does have the link where you can directly submit your application. So again, key thing, if you're completing your application right now, start working on your IRB, because that determines, if you get funded, how soon you can actually receive your funding.
That's a great point. Yes. All right, some questions that are popping up on the chat. So the first question is, good evening, everyone. Are animal model studies allowed?
Potentially, if it is related to prostate cancer, so if it is well justified, it's related to prostate cancer. Yeah, because if you notice again, let me go back to the slide that shows the types of research that we're expecting. If it has to do with etiology, all right, if it has to do with etiology, prevention, detection, diagnosis, treatment, or survivorship, then it is admissible.
Good question. Next question that we have is asking about, can this research project be strictly research or intervention projects that has research components?
It could be intervention as well. Absolutely. Yes. Intervention is actually in the full RFA. We summarize it here, but if you take a look at the full RFA, I'm trying to locate that here. Intervention studies are definitely welcome as well.
Okay. One clarifying point from Dr. Adenma, she mentioned that I think the $500 to $1,000 is for the CBO, and it is $3,000 to $5,000 for research studies. So again, that's just a point. Once we further find the details about the award, we can send that clarification with everyone.
Okay.
Okay. Next question we have is, please, is it going to be a reoccurring grant?
So right now we have 1 to 2 years, all right, depending on funding availability potentially. But be thinking about so what can you do right now to generate preliminary data that will enable you go for bigger grants? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to stimulate researchers without experience, without grant funding, to be able to get some pilot study done and then leverage this to go get extra grants. So right now, for the next 2 years is what we are committed to, but then we'll look for more resources. As we have more resources, we could potentially extend it behind the 1 to 2 years that we have it right now. So there's a potential for that to occur.
Thank you, Dr. Kaninji. All right. Any additional questions from our chat? Okay. Next question we have is the proposal only in English?
English or French? English or French? And actually, I've been in correspondence with our French colleagues. They also wanted a unique session for themselves, and I told Dr. Kulubali we'll make that happen. So,
Oh,
English
that's
or French?
great.
Yes.
Okay. I do know that we have a French version of the flyers as well, that especially of the award flyers. So,
Yeah.
right. Next question we have is, can someone who has not completed a PhD but presently undergoing the PhD program apply?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you are a PhD candidate, you could definitely apply. Absolutely. Yes. So I can see this ideally for some folks who are working on their dissertation already, and perhaps they were limited on what they could do for their dissertation. This is a great opportunity to expand that, be more creative. Yes. So if you're a PhD candidate, absolutely take advantage of this. A PhD candidate, a postdoc, all right. So postdoc, you just graduated and no big funding opportunities have come your way yet. Great opportunity for you.
Okay. Next question that we have are community outreach and engagement, COE, and advocacy allowed?
Absolutely. So if you take a look at this section where we talked about what's areas of interest, I'm just trying to pull through the RFA right here. So etiology, prevention, diagnosis, treatment, or survivorship. Absolutely. So advocacy is part of survivorship. Advocacy is part of that. So they would definitely be eligible to apply.
Great. Okay. And for the awards, will there be additional support provided? Example, the iCARE cores.
Absolutely. So that's the benefit of participating in this iCare funding mechanism is that you have a wide array of researchers in Africa, in Europe, in the United States that could actually help mentor you and also provide resources for you. So when we talked about the eligibility, where we said investigators who don't have the expertise, but then they have a mentor or somebody already working in iCare who has the lab or is more tenured or has published using the research methods that you're looking to you're proposing in your application, you definitely want to reach out to them. You definitely want to leverage what already exists through iCare. We have a ton of resources in Africa, in Europe, and also United States that I think will be beneficial for you to find out what does iCare already have and how can you leverage that even in your application as well. So you'll be doing yourself a favor building on already established infrastructure. I know earlier today we had the iCare MAM score talking about different resources that they provide, talking about how they can even help people in terms of their questionnaire. That's a huge opportunity to take advantage of. We do have MAMS people in Africa, in Europe, also here in the United States. So you'll be doing yourself a disservice if you don't spend time on the iCaRE website to see what the different calls are, what the different projects are, to see what's ongoing and how you could play a part of that, or also how you can link that to your application, because you could find some potential good mentors from iCaRE.
Most definitely. Thank you, Dr. Kaninji. All right, we have a couple more questions on here. So, must the second, must the PI PhD? Can the PI have other team members who have a PhD?
So you don't necessarily have to have a PhD, but if you're working towards a PhD, if you have a master's, for example, and you're working towards a PhD, that's fine. In some areas, I know I was in Africa earlier this year in June. Dr. Rotimi, um, Dr. Chengufo, and myself, we were at a symposium in Yaoundé, and one of the most engaging component of the symposium was really a conversation about AI. We had some folks from the Polytechnic there doing some work on AI and try to leverage that for prostate cancer. So that's a perfect example where you may have a master's degree in whatever discipline that has to do with AI, but as long as that project is connected to prostate cancer, you are eligible to apply without it necessarily having a PhD. But you must have mentors who establish folks in the area where you're looking to pursue your studies so they can help guide you.
Okay. So next question that we have is, is there eligibility relative to the country, or can anyone who is in Africa apply?
So technically, anyone in Africa can apply, and especially we're encouraging collaboration. Right now, we have uh, um, right now we have investigators in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in Ghana, in Cameroon, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Nigeria. All right, I didn't mention Sierra Leone. We also have
Yeah.
investigators in Sierra Leone. So these are the core areas. We're not limited to that. But we encourage people outside of these areas to find out, how can I collaborate with somebody in Cote d'Ivoire at Institute Pasteur? How can I collaborate with Dr. Didiyumo in Sierra Leone? How can I collaborate with someone else in Ghana or in Nigeria or in Cameroon? So we're really encouraging some of that, particularly where we have, you may have an idea and you're really trying to see if you could work among different populations in Africa. It does make sense to collaborate across borders. So we're encouraging cross-border collaborations, particularly among CaPTC sites.
Perfect. Okay. So, last question that I see on here is, where can we get additional information, or who should we contact for additional questions?
So if you look at the flyer, my contact information is there. You can definitely send us email. You can also go to the iCaRE website. There's another resource for you to browse through there. But you can email me directly about this mechanism, and we'll try to get to your answer your questions in time. So I just want to reiterate one more thing in Africa for investigators in Africa. I know sometimes the challenges may be, especially for our scientists who do wet lab, who work in laboratories and may not have the resource, but you have a great idea. That should not limit you. You want to take a look at other investigators who have labs in Africa. I can think about a well-equipped lab like in Covenant University. We've had investigators from different parts, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Cameroon, go there and do some work. So you may have an idea, you may not have the lab resources to do the technique at your own lab. So that's an opportunity to see, can I do this at Institute Pasteur in Cote d'Ivoire? So that's an opportunity for you to collaborate. So don't be limited by the fact that you may not have the resources for your technique at your institution. Look out to other potential collaborators across Africa where you can still get your work done, or maybe beyond that, if it's possible.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Kaninji. Oh, we have one more question, actually. So someone was asking, I will need the recording and slides of this presentation. Are we okay with sharing these slides, Dr. Kaninji, or
Absolutely.
do
We'll
you?
share the slides, and I already have a French version that I shared with our French PIs already, and we'll meet with them.
Okay.
So I made two versions. We have the English and we have the French, and I'll share that with you right away so we can make that widely available.
Okay, and that has prompted more questions from the audience. So, will the award be made to the investigator's institution or to the individual PI?
So to the individual PI, but we do want to make sure that you have institutional commitment that are in support. So you're not just a lone ranger doing your stuff without your institution knowing that this research is taking place within your institution. So we do, if you take a look at the requirements, you do have to provide a letter from your institution so they know, they're aware that you're actually part of this iCaRE. And make sure you register if you're not an iCaRE member. All right, so make sure you go to the iCaRE website and also register. So as you're applying, let your institution know you're applying for this iCaRE mechanism. And so we don't encourage you to be applying secretively, hiding that from your institution. So your institution actually should be supporting you and perhaps making sure that you have the necessary resources in terms of lab, in terms of time, protected time to get the work done.
Okay. Someone asked from the audience, is there a limit to the number of applicants?
No limit. No limit.
And we have another question that you mentioned the idea of using LOIs. Is this for informational purposes or will it be reviewed and you invite a few people to submit?
No, I was just saying we do not do LOIs because we're trying to get things running rather quickly. So, but what we're trying to do is to try to anticipate from our PIs to see what areas of focus might be coming in, so we could start preparing our review teams, because we want to have the review teams with the necessary expertise to review all the applications. So we don't have time to review ROI before the full application. So just go ahead and do your application. Just make sure you follow the guidelines. Make sure it is related to prostate cancer so that it is not dismissed administratively without review. So the first layer of review will just make sure that the criteria have been met, and then we'll go ahead and assign that to reviewers to, in the interest of time, because we have a very streamlined process here. We're very aggressive in terms of how quickly we want to review these. So for that reason, we don't want to place the burden on investigators to do LOI and then find out later whether they're invited to submit. So just go ahead and prepare your application. Just make sure you meet those guidelines, those eligibility criteria.
Okay. Similar question, but still different. Is there a limit to the number of applications by an individual?
That's an interesting situation. So in the sense that an individual has more than one idea, more than one proposal, I'll go ahead. If you have the availability to do more than one application in this short time, go ahead and do it.
Okay. Can nonprofits apply for this award?
As an institution, yes, you can apply. Yeah. As long as it's a nonprofit based in Africa and they're looking to do the work in Africa. And they should have folks as part of that nonprofit. So, for example, who will be leading the project. So those people too also have to meet certain eligibility criteria.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you please provide and this is from Dr. Denna, can you please provide an overview of the core/services available to support the grants through iCaRE?
Absolutely. So I'll talk off the top of my head. The ones that I forget, you can remind me. So we do have the MAMS, just because MAMS had a webinar earlier today. Yes. So MAMS is the methods and measurements. So for folks who are doing studies that include survey or focus group questions, all right, you can actually reach out to them, and I saw some documents that they've actually prepared to help, especially scientists who may not have been trained in certain disciplines. For example, you're not trained in doing a focus group. They have materials that can help prepare you in terms of the guidelines, how you go about that, how you collect your data. So how you collect data in a way that you can report it in a way that it's easy to integrate with other studies, particularly other CaPTC studies or other studies in the field, is very important. You want to give a thought to that before you start developing your instrument. MAMS can definitely help you. So that's one. We also have DAMAS, which is a data management and statistical analysis. So we do have folks who are biostatisticians. There are some in the United States. There's some there in Nigeria based at ABA Center. All right, so they can help provide you, for example, what's my sample size like? You're trying to do a study that will be statistically significant, all right, especially if you will use that as preliminary studies for future grants. So we do have biostatisticians that can help you with some preliminary analysis in terms of what your sample size calculation should be, all right? DAMAS can also help you if you're looking to use a big data set to do analysis. If you're doing an epidemiological study, for example, or you're requesting big data set. So DAMAS can help you in terms of receiving, storing, managing that huge data set. If you're looking to leverage the CaPTC familiar cohort study and other studies that CaPTC have, so we do have a biostatistics help that can help you in terms of what variables you need, how many. So in terms of streamlining your variables and seeing if we have enough participants for those variables that can help you do your analysis. So that's two. We do have, and I'll need help here with my memory. We do have bioinformatics core. All right, we do have bioinformatics core. So for folks who are doing like a wet lab, you are a chemist or whatever your research may be, you're doing mostly in the lab. We do have a bio specimen lab. We do have folks that can help you, whether it's in Africa or in Europe. We do have a core in iCCaRE that can help you in terms of that. And then we also have a community outreach and engagement core that can also help you, and partnership. How do you establish partnerships? All right, if you want to do research, well, you're doing research to benefit a certain community. How can you engage them? How do you establish partnerships that are long lasting? That will also help you, as was the question was asked, if you're designing interventions. Well, you need to have established relationships with these communities, and we do have a core that can help you prepare you such that your application will be solid in that regard. All right, there's a few more cores that I'm missing. Emelina, help me. You're muted.
My apologies. I mentioned we have the traces core, which
That's
is our
translational science. Is that?
Yeah, it's the core that helps provide oversight on the clinical trial studies or clinical trial studies involved within iCCaRE.
Absolutely. So we have that. We have planning and evaluation core, all right, to make sure that you're documenting the impact of your work. So one of the key questions we're talking here about significance is, what's the impact? So what? If you're successful, how does that change the field? So we have to be able to document what we're doing because we have to show impact. How many people did you reach? How many people did you touch? What's the impact? For example, in iCCaRE, we have one of the projects is focused on a developmental, it's a focus on a certificate program. Is actually based out of the ABA Center in Nigeria. So how many people did we train? What's the impact of that work that we did? So if we have a lot of clinicians that need training in certain areas to enable them better serve their clients, how are we tracking that? All right. One more core, I believe.
We have DHCC, Digital Health Cancer.
Digital health. So we're doing a lot of
Communication.
innovative work here on iCCaRE using all kinds of artificial intelligence, augmented reality. So if that's your area of interest and you're looking to do that, I know I mentioned that we saw some researchers in Yaoundé this past summer who are interested in that. So you definitely want to check that core on our website and reach out to folks like Dr. Chengufo, who's an expert in that area, so I can help guide and direct you as you formulate your proposal.
And we kind of touched upon this one, but we have our REACT core, research, education, and training.
Yes, and that's the one I believe that the Global Certificate Program falls under, the one that Dr. Ladeyebo is heading from the ABA Center. So they have great resources. So you definitely want to take a look at that rehab, because there are some great things that will be coming. I don't want to steal her thunder, but take a look at the website. Again, there are some very innovative approaches that will really try to make sure that we're equipping African researchers with the resources to be able to address health issues within our own communities. So if you're a researcher in Africa, there's never been a time like this I mean, I was just gasping with excitement when I heard about this funding mechanism, because it's actually providing opportunity for folks who otherwise will not have the opportunity to compete for other grants. So what iCaRE funding mechanism is doing is really trying to provide you with the opportunity to compete with other folks. You're trying to write competitive grants, you don't have preliminary data. Well, here's the opportunity for you to at least do a pilot project, have preliminary data that you can leverage and go on to do bigger, better, higher, more competitive grants. So this is really an exciting time. And I don't think we have any complaints anymore. We can't complain that, well, the fundings are all in the US or in Europe. We don't have, well, here's a funding opportunity specifically tailored for investigators in Africa, particularly investigators who have not received any funding as of this point. So here's an opportunity to compete fairly with others, hopefully get funded, do some amazing work, and then move on to accomplish even more greater things and to help reduce health disparities within our communities.
Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Kaninji. Um, I we had another follow-up question regarding the course, and I know we have 15 minutes remaining. So,
So maybe
um,
we can go to the website. Maybe let me see if I can pull that
mhm.
up.
Did you want to show your screen?
Let me pull it up first and then I'll
Okay.
share.
All right. Did you want me to ask you the question while you pull
Uh,
that up?
yes. Hang on.
So the follow-up question for the course is from Dr. Denna. Thanks for the oversight of the course. Does this mean that we don't need to add staff for course/services provided by iCaRE? For example, not adding a biostatistician if DEMAS can help.
Can you repeat the question again? Let me pay attention.
Yes, so from Dr. Denna, she was mentioning thanks for the oversight of the course. Does this mean that we don't need to add staff for core/services provided by iCaRE? For example, not adding a biostatistician if DEMAS can help.
Yes, but I'll request that you reach out to Damas early. That's a great thing. Make sure you reach out to Damas early, especially as you're formulating your research. Tell them what you're trying to do. Get advice from them about how to go about it, and then um, also let them know you would like to work with them if this gets funded. So once you have the approval, you can definitely include that. And actually, if I were you, I'll ask somebody from the Damas core if you can include them as part of your application. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Kaninji, thank
Yes,
you.
I'm trying to go back and see if I can share my two. So now I lost you completely. Oh,
We're
here we
here,
go.
we can see you.
Yes. No, I lost where I was. I'm trying to, because I was able to pull up I was able to pull up. Let me see if I can share the website. Hmm. So share, present.
Okay, give me a moment. So right now, what we're seeing are your PowerPoint slides where it says eligibility.
Okay. So let me move this over. What are you seeing now?
We still see your PowerPoint slides.
Okay.
But I can put the iCare link or website link in the chat.
Yeah. So
So we do have a website. Posting it right now in the chat for everyone to review. Oh, it's actually this link. So it's iCare for Black Men.
So, Emelina, if I remove from stage, would that take me off, or would I just take off my PowerPoint so I can share the website? The
I
slide.
can remove the slide here.
Yeah, remove the slide. Okay. So let me try to share this time and see. Okay.
Are you sharing from your end or?
Yeah, I'm trying to share from my end. Uh,
And oh, let's see, add to stage. There we go. We can see your screen, Dr. Kaninji.
Using the iCare website.
Yes.
All right, so these are the cores. We talked about Damas. Just want to make sure we didn't miss anyone. We talked about Damas. We talked about MAMS. We didn't talk about this one.
Oh, that's BIRC. So our website does need to be updated with the new names we have for iCare Phase 2.
Okay, so this is pathology. We talked about biospecimen. We did talk about that. So the folks in the US, folks in Africa, that could be leverage in terms of if you have part of your study has to do with biospecimen. So definitely there are folks here that you can leverage as well. All right.
Perfect. Okay. I know we have 9 more minutes left. And I see 2 new questions in the chat. So there is a question involving, will the budget receive a score or not? Will the
So
budget
the,
review receive a score or not?
so the budget review will be in terms of how feasible. So if you're proposing something um, in your research methods and your budget doesn't align, then that may be problematic. We're just reviewing the budget to make sure it aligns with what the main purpose or the main proposal entails. So is there alignment between what you're saying you're trying to do and what you're requesting in terms of the budget?
Okay. And someone asked here, how do I become a member?
So right here, there's a membership button right here. Can you see
Oh,
that? Where my
let me share.
Can you see that on the link that you just
Yes,
shared? If you click on that website, the far right top button is a membership button. And we also have that too for CaPTC.
great. And last question here, if if this is a team science by multiple MPIs across multiple countries, can one ask for additional funding?
Yes, yes. If it's a multiple study site, absolutely yes. Yes, you could.
Perfect.
And we're
Okay,
encouraging those. We're encouraging multiple site studies. Yeah.
great. Okay, any final questions from our audience before we conclude? I feel like we've had a lot of questions, so definitely appreciative of you, Dr. Kaninji, for answering everyone's questions so far.
No, I'm definitely really excited about this funding opportunity. Just I cannot wait to see because we know there's a lot of talent there in Africa, but the opportunity does not necessarily exist. So the other thing I wanted to mention, lest I forget, is start working on your NIH bio sketch because this is meant to help make sure that you have an NIH bio sketch. So if you Google NIH bio sketch, you will see that templates, there are examples, talk to your mentor, talk to others, because we're trying to make sure that you have the tools necessary to go beyond this funding mechanism. So we find this as a way to bridge you between not having preliminary data, not having any basis from which to start applying for D43 or Fogarty international grants to at least have preliminary data. You can go for D43 for Fogarty. That's what we're expecting to you afterwards. Actually, one of the items you have to tell us is at the end of this funding opportunity, where do you see yourself? Why do you see iCare funding you down the road? What's the bigger impact years later? All right, a D43 will be a natural extension. If you collect enough feasibility, enough data to show feasibility for what you can do, you can leverage that for D43 later on. So getting your NIH biosketch and beginning to do those things that will be required for those bigger grants down the road is what this funding mechanism is trying to do. We're trying to make sure that you have those tools. You have access to the mentors. You have access to iCare. All right. So talking to iCare, to MAMS, talking to folks, see that as a strategic way of setting yourself for next future grants. Because once you work with those mentors, once you work with MAMS, you can definitely leverage that in the next grant that you're going for. So think long term, not just getting this money here in the meantime, but think about what this could set you up for 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So I'm really excited about this. I think this will just generate a lot of talented folks, especially folks who can work collaboratively, team science, multiple countries, multiple sites, addressing unique questions with unique populations that we have there in Africa. Unique population. That's a huge strength. All right. So just make sure that your questions, though, for either etiology, prevention, survivorship, engagement, any of that, make sure it is prostate cancer centered. So even if you're doing AI, how would that AI help us address disparities or address issues with prostate cancer? As long as you make that link, I think you're on solid ground. And again, this comes to working with established PIs. They may not be leading the project, they might be providing directions, but they'll help you in terms of how do you frame your questions. How do you design your approach such that you can answer those questions? And how does the results of this study propel you to go for further grant opportunity down the road? So I could go forever, but I'm just excited about this, and I hope that we get an influx of applications. Let us worry about the funding, worry about the science, get the research questions well formulated, and submit that, and let's see if this will go beyond the 1 to 2 years. But for right now, you have a unique opportunity to really take advantage of, to have really, I think this could change the trajectory of a lot of careers in terms of scientific careers in Africa. I think this has the potential to really change the trajectory, to really set you out on a path to collaborating with others, doing some good science, and using that as a foundation for greater research projects. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Kaninji. And I know we're almost at time. And someone did have a follow-up question regarding the if there will be any help sessions to develop NIH documents such as BIOS.
We're working on that. So our colleague who was supposed to help with that, she's traveling. She has some family engagements now. I will try to check with her as soon as she gets back to see if we can put up a good session that would help our colleagues. Yes, especially with the BioSketch. But we'll get back to you on that.
Okay. And then last question for the night, or for not for the night, depending what time zone you are in. But last question for our session is: can you match investigators to facilitate team science?
So it depends on the research question. So that's why you can come to any of the, go to the iCCaRE website, reach out to any of the MPIs there. They could help match you. So once we understand what your area of focus is, we could definitely provide you suggestions, because we work with researchers too in Africa. So you can reach out to me individually. I'm more a behavioral guy. If you reach out to me with some wet science thing, I may have some ideas of potential folks that I can direct you to. So I can help. Also, check out some of the MPIs on the iCCaRE website. There are so many MPIs there. Also, if you're a CaPTC researcher, your CaPTC site PI can also help provide you with suggestions, but I'll be glad to do it as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kaninji. This was a great session with so many thoughtful questions being asked in our chat. Thank you for your time. And I just want to let the audience know that we've concluded now our session. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
great one. Bye bye.